All right, we'll open May 6, 2024 Planning Commission, Town of Bakersfield. And it is opened at, come on. Pick up, oh, it's off. What time is it?
7:10.
7:10. And are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Yes. We apparently need to vote on a chair. Which we didn't do in March,
Okay.
so probably should do that.
We still need to have Linda McCall village designation. Seems like we did that,
You did it.
She came and left, yeah,
so we could replace that.
sounds good.
All right, so we'll replace Linda McCall, village designation, because she got our signature before the meeting, with election of officers.
There we go.
And I can almost promise you, we'll all have a job at the end of the night.
Don't need any more jobs.
All right, so, is there anybody online? I don't see anybody. All
I see no one.
right,
Heather, you out there?
so there's two participants, is that us and you?
That's that camera.
So no one is online, so we'll not introduce ourselves. It would be just, I would have to go through my whole life story. Because I'm in that kind of mood.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so let's move right into the election of officers. No more campaigning near the election headquarters.
I nominate Bill Irwin to be chair.
Okay, so we have this guy, Bill Irwin, nominated for chair. Are there any other nominations?
Maybe after we hear your life story.
Yeah, you want more different people. All right. Hearing no nominations, do you want to move, see if we get a slate and we could vote for a slate?
Yeah.
How about vice chair? Is that,
Nominate Ken.
all right, great. And are there any other nominations? You fools, who would think so? All right,
Good, it's
hearing none, we'll try for a secretary. I,
Ah,
wow, how did she get that done? All right, well, you do have a chance to make this a really.
What else is there?
treasurer?
Treasurer.
Vice president?
Yeah, well, treasurer of, yeah. So, if there's no other nominations for that, position secretary, then we can vote for a slate, Bill Irwin chair, Kim Carter vice chair, secretary Nikki Cribb, and is this just for a year? Okay, for 2024, 2025. With, because the term would end in town meeting day. All right, all in favor of the slate, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No, so it 4-0 for the slate. Great. And seeing there's no public, unless John, we could consider you public, do you have any comment? All right. Were you able to get some, yeah, there's minutes here. You know who did this? Ken.
Yeah,
If we had seen this beforehand, we could have switched the whole slate.
If we had called you, you could have done
Yeah, well, I can't believe I forgot that.
them.
I thought 15th, it can't be 2 weeks into the month already. It must be the 20th. Yeah. All right, so I cannot vote for this. I was not here. Is there a motion relative to these minutes?
Make a motion that we accept the motion, that accept the minutes as written. I second that.
All right, and discussion, glad to see that Linda came by
Mhm.
to talk about it, and I'm glad that she jumped on board with that. She really understands the process being in the village.
Yeah.
And
She's got an interest in it also. Which
Yeah.
then I
is good.
see that Derek Krieger came by for the high density zoning district.
Yeah, he's building a house there for him and his wife, I guess, or girlfriend, whatever, and keeping most of the place in the tree farm.
Okay, and said map was well prepared and that it'll be accepted after state wastewater and road access
And
permits.
we have that.
So you got that now?
Do you still have the folder, Ken?
I put it back in the,
Okay, yeah, it's in there.
Okay, so that was signed tonight?
yes.
Is that what you were signing? Okay, so I'm gonna add that to the minutes then, that you signed the Mylar for the Krieger.
Actually.
And that, was that a fixed? It,
No.
it was just,
it's high
they just
density
chose to
road.
do 2 acres.
Yeah.
So explain to me about the fixed allocation.
Mm,
So,
Chisel off 2 acres in the rural district.
anyway, anywhere, I
Conservation.
believe, yeah, any district.
yeah, I
Then what happens after that? You can't subdivide more for 5 years, but then you can chisel off another 2?
think it's longer, I think it's 10.
10, I think, yeah, but, yep,
So every 10 years you can chisel off 2.
well, for now, we're gonna, that's gonna be discussed with the new bylaw, the new bylaws. It's a bit of a loophole, I say.
I would say it's a huge loophole.
When we did the last plan, there was some talk about getting rid of it, and I think Gary kind of presented some information that made it seem like we might want to keep it, so we did end up keeping it around, but it seems like it's getting used a lot for
What
just
do you call it?
just basically to get around
Fixed
fixed area allocation, it's called, yeah.
And you know, it isn't common from my recollection
Yeah,
of our
no, yeah,
conversation
the Northwest.
with the
is-
Northwest Regional Planning.
There's no other towns that have,
Oh, we're the
Have
only
that.
town that has it, Bill?
Maybe in this region for sure, but there might be something in other regions.
I think it was originally put in there because like a farmer didn't want to have to make a 10-acre lot because it would interfere with their corn land or something. So I think that's when it originally got introduced way back when. But now it's just been kind of used as a way to kind of make smaller lots. Which I don't think we should be promoting necessarily, but
Especially in the rural and
I mean,
conservation
just
district.
because it's designated rural 10-acre for a reason,
mhm,
that kind of like undermines that.
And they tend to be near roads, which means then that your possibility is that you could have a road that you wanted to be mostly rural, turns out to look more
Yeah, like.
residential. And so, yeah, that's something for us to consider. I haven't had any evidence from the years that have passed to persuade me that what made us change our mind from deleting it is still worthwhile. I think it might be useful to consider deleting it, but that's for another time. Speaking of the town plan revision, I was informed that it doesn't have to happen until next year, so we're a little bit ahead.
25 or 26.
It's 7 years from the last time it was done. And I think it was 18, so 25. So in 25, I have to look at, let me see if I can get her email.
Let's finish up this minutes.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, so anyway, no further comment on the minutes. All in favor of those minutes, please say aye.
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 I,
Yeah, we were in discussion of the minutes, which took us down many roads.
sorry about that.
It's okay.
No.
It's the most exciting thing on our agenda. Since there's no zoning administrator report. And we are to the next item on the agenda of
Yeah, we'll just bring you up to date on last time, Brian, the zoning administrator, had submitted a couple of questions that he wanted us to talk about concerning the salvage yard down there on the west end of town. Oh, I would say,
Right.
it should say west end of town in the minutes there.
It's a salvage yard right now, but that's not what he's applying for a permit for. He wants a building. You know, with all the,
Yeah, has he got any applications in or?
yeah, I think he's got applications in,
Oh.
and then Brian said he was gonna reapply. Because the other one got hung up in A&R,
Mhm.
but now you've talked to A&R. Did they ever,
DEC
So-
or?
I talked to DEC.
you talked to DEC, okay. Yeah, okay, one.
DEC stands for?
Department of
Department of
Environmental Conservation.
Conservation.
That's what.
So, I reached out to DEC to follow up on this because it was supposedly started between Carl and Brenda. When Brenda was the zoning administrator. I spoke to Brenda first off. Brenda claims that the emails and everything should be in the file for Carl for that building, for the permit. I don't know where that is. I haven't been able to speak to Brian to find out because I don't know where the file is. I assume he has it since he's working on it. So she also said it was on the zoning board administrator computer. It should be in the emails from when she did it as well. I then reached out to DEC to find out where it was, and I wound up in a gentleman by the name of Vince's department, which is in charge. Vince is in charge of salvage yards, which right now that would classify somewhat as a salvage yard. There's more than 3 vehicles on the property for months at a time. I think there's almost 20 or more right now. There was almost, I drive by it, try to count, you get to 18, there's more cars to count, but I'm driving by it. I need to look
Yeah.
at the road. Vince, who is in charge of that portion of DEC, said he was going to reach out to Carl, tell him he wants to come up and take a look at it. He also absolutely confirmed when he brought up the topology maps that there is a wetland up there in the back end of it, and that is a concern. We talked about if Carl builds a building on that, it removes it from his hands because it's no longer outside, it's in a structure. I don't know if Vince was able to get up there because I spoke to him 3 weeks ago, almost a month ago. I guess it was 3 weeks ago, right after this meeting. I don't know if he made it out yet. He said he had a lot of places to go, but he would reach out to Carl because ultimately Carl should be there and or to open it up, even though that's really just the fencing is almost a U. You can walk around the backside of the fence. It is still private property, so he was going to reach out to him and see if he could not get up there to look at it. As was discussed at the last meeting, where it was left was DEC / EPA, but pretty much DEC would have to determine what the requirements for any structure he was going to put there would
And
be.
he's willing to do anything. for us.
Right. That's what was said. He's willing to do what it takes. We just need to know what he needs to do.
Mhm.
Because we don't want to be as a town on the hook if we approve an application and then find out that it wasn't done right or to DEC's requirements, and now we're on the hook to get this thing rectified and or possibly in some kind of suit.
Right, to avoid that.
Right.
So seems like Brian, so once Carl has a plan, that should go through Brian, it seems like to me, and then Brian should kind of coordinate with the state
Right. I
about
think
whether that plan of Carl's is gonna meet state requirements.
the requirements, right? Exactly. We can't, I know on the board side, I speak for myself. I'm not speaking for the other members. But I don't think we want to take on the liability of just approving a structure to find out it isn't appropriate. And it's not just dry storage, it's somewhat being presented as dry storage, but they're putting the vehicles inside the building. So as I said a couple times already, you almost need to treat it like a repair shop, a garage, right? Right, where they have to handle the fluids and all that stuff, and they have specific regulations on how to deal with that. But ultimately, it's gonna come down to DEC and what the requirements are gonna be for the storage of those vehicles in a building.
Mhm.
Well, I think that's absolutely true, but I seem to think that in the bylaws, there's some regulations for a place that has
We looked,
some of that action.
we looked at them last time.
Yeah.
And
But that's for outside.
found that it sort of didn't.
So it's not for
He
a,
doesn't have it. You know, it's outside now.
no, I understand. What I'm saying is that they talk about different kinds of businesses.
Mhm.
And, you know, there's campgrounds and there's shops, stores. And then I thought there was something that might be related to automotive work. And the reason is that automotive work has lots of fluids generated. And generally, you don't want your building to be built on the basis of dry storage, like this building is essentially just dry storage with some plumbing for personal hygiene. You go to a good garage, they have ways to manage oil, hydraulic fluids, and all those other things that might accumulate. And, you know, I feel like it's really important to make sure that we're following not just the A&R for outside, but our bylaws for purposes of structures. And then lastly, the fire safety division might want to understand what's going on there relative to the work, because all of those fluids are flammables and you have certain amounts of them inside of a building. It may need sprinklers, it may need advanced fire protection system, alarming, could be a variety of things like that. So
So the gray area for right now, because it's an outside type thing. As he said, Vermont really doesn't, what Vince said was Vermont really doesn't have something for a wrecking yard, which is really what it is. It's not a junk yard per se. People aren't coming to take parts off it, whatever. But it's a wrecking yard because well, that's not accurate either, because my understanding now is they're pulling vehicles from their other locations and putting them there as well. But, you know, initially how this was presented a year ago, because it was April a year ago, I think they purchased it. How it was presented was, this is for vehicles that were disabled or in a vehicle wreck that, you know, needed towing and storage until an insurance company could come and look at it and determine what they were going to do with the vehicle, rebuild it, you know, declare it a wreck and, you know, pay out the claim completely. But like I said, and maybe there are that many wrecks, I have no idea, but the idea between that and the length of storage, the cars are there a bit of time. And you know, what I believe the way the salvage yards are written right now is no more than 3 vehicles, unregistered vehicles on a piece of property, for 60 days, 90 days.
90, I think.
90, maybe it's 90 days. I'm going off of memory, and sometimes that's not the best thing. But that's what the statute is. You're obviously well above 3 cars. Are they registered? I'm pretty sure most of them are registered. If it's a wrecking type situation. The other thing Vince told me was, you know, what a lot of these organizations do who do this, they will get a temporary registration from Vermont's DMV, get it all set up so that they claim the car underneath themselves, so it's registered. So there's a lot of pieces here for a 1 acre piece of land. There's 1 acre, I believe.
and in a naturally vulnerable area with the
Right.
river watershed, and frankly, in an area that is part of the kind of scenic byway of the town.
It is.
You
but
never
it's-
want a junkyard to be the first thing you see as you see the sign for
No,
entering.
But it's
Bakersfield.
also a valid business concern and it needs to be, I mean, we have cars that break down. We've got to be able to,
And he doesn't
Deal
want a
with that.
junkyard.
These are not broken down cars. These are wrecks.
right, but.
And
we
almost-
Have to go somewhere.
Right.
So.
They almost always go to scrap yards. It sounds to me like we could be on a slippery slope to a junkyard like the one in Fairfield. Now, drive by the bridge that they're gonna tear down next to the store. And that junkyard there is probably started on the same process where he says he's just gonna store cars until the insurance people.
Is it outside?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all.
Oh, it's visible. I mean, there's more than cars there now.
But you know, he hasn't, there's nothing about a building yet.
Right.
So how long do you wait for somebody to build?
He wanted,
He
it,
did one.
but he got stalled because the permit wouldn't pass without DEC about that,
Mm.
that wet area.
Mhm.
Right.
Wetland.
That's what started this whole thing, the wetlands.
He's ready to put the building up,
Yeah, he was building a large building, 30 foot tall,
yeah,
to store vehicles and tires and such. So,
stalled.
So if that happens, that'll be fine.
yeah, we just need to find out.
But I
how
think
the
that
building's supposed
in
to-
addition, when you build a storage building for wrecked vehicles, they leak.
There's-
Yes.
We want to know what needs
That's.
to be
Exactly.
done.
And that-
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I don't know if DEC does come in because it's not outside.
Yeah,
It may be where we have to bring in, say, somebody from
The
fire
other
safety,
mentioned.
right? The-
So what happens when somebody has, we've got a couple of garages in town, so what happens then?
they have, systems in
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
They have, so
what-
they have,
What does that fall under? Who approves that in that case?
I think it's DEC has gas stations also. The Department of Environmental Conservation has a service station group. And
So it would make sense that it would fall under that.
yeah, we just need either to have Brian get on the phone and talk to a supervisor down there. No, I have not heard from Brian. So, yeah, please. So the retort was, well, this used to be a factory here that dealt with, syrups and all. But the problem with that is you're dealing with syrups and flavoring, not
Right.
oil, gas, antifreeze and hydraulic fluids.
right, which have carcinogens in them, benzene, and they're highly flammable.
And we tried to stress, Bill, that we're not trying to impede Carl's plan. Like I said, the last one, Carl just kind of put the cart before the horse. We're not trying, and nobody, I don't think anyone's trying to stop him from doing what he's doing. We just want to make sure it's done to the proper specifications and statutes. And that's what's holding up his structure.
Yeah.
So,
And unfortunately, the salvage yard people at DEC are among the
'Cause we have.
most poorly resourced groups.
That's the other.
They can't get to every place where people junk their cars.
well, it's a perfect point because according to Vince, he's the last person. He's it. And he has the whole state.
Hmm.
And he said he's getting towards retirement age. So there's not a plethora of people to do this. And he expressed to me that, even like you said, there's salvage like yards all around town, but they don't act unless they receive a call.
So it might be appropriate for the town to consider if the state can't do something and it's in the best interest of the town, that the town consider enacting ordinance relative to, because you don't want to just say that the states can't do it. And they only got one guy left and he's retiring.
Right.
What are we gonna do? You gotta say, we, in the interest of the people of Bakersfield, are going to create ordinances relative to this. And that might be something to think about. We can bring in some experts to help move this along. If he builds a nice building that's safe, that's unlikely to create a hazard, either environmental or public safety, and it can be done in a fashion that is in keeping with the rural character of the town, and that, and it satisfies the outdoor environmental issues by the river, then that would be good, but
I think the one course that we as a town could take, if we're gonna do an ordinance, is put together the idea and then take it, send it, whatever, to DEC and say, listen, we need to make sure this is gonna be okay. Just give us a thumbs up. That's all we need is,
you gotta imagine that some of the
The
other
only one.
cities and towns in Vermont that have dealt with junkyards and they develop an ordinance because the state can't keep it up.
well, the state has a physical ordinance or legislative type piece for junkyards. What this is a wreckage charge, which we don't have as a state.
That doesn't sound like, that sounds made up to me.
Inside.
A wrecking
This is
yard
a
or-
I feel like we're going down a rabbit hole here.
Right.
Because
Because
right now,
It's
I think
not-
you're right, Bill, that long term, that is an issue and we are seeing junkyards slowly creeping up. But with this instance, I
it's a
think
building.
Carl has been very specific that he wants a building and I think we should focus on that for now without losing sight of that
No,
issue.
that is true, but this is the planning commission.
Yeah.
This is not the decision commission.
Right.
And
Mhm.
part of the goal of this commission is to think about long-term
Mhm.
and what can be done to protect the nature of the community that we moved into. And in my opinion, it's not a rabbit hole, it's actually important discussion about an issue that could become not just singular, but becomes multiple, because one person did it, and then somebody else decides they can do it.
And that's already happened.
And frankly,
Mhm.
I live on a road where this is already happening.
Yeah.
And
happening.
I have gone to the salvage yard people and they are unable to do anything because the state doesn't put the resources into it. And it has little to do with Carl. It has everything to do with the future. I like Carl. I think Carl's going to come through on a lot of things here, but I'm more concerned about we should have some sort of criteria for planning these things. And I don't think calling it a different name is useful, because I don't think, if you look at it, a year from when it started, it looks like a junkyard. It could be another year from now, this is still there and it looks like a junkyard with more
Right,
than it does.
right. I don't see it getting less. Let's put it that
It's
way.
not gonna.
Right.
No.
So-
It's,
We started this conversation with a specific question from Brian last meeting, asking us to help him deal with this specific situation. So, I'm sorry, that's what I meant by rabbit
Because
hole,
he
not
was, because he was
serious.
looking for
a specific
specific
answer.
answers for Carl.
And,
So
and unfortunately, unless we have something that's specific to this
we do have.
kind of enterprise,
That's pretty definitive.
Yeah.
right, and
But the building with cars in it, we don't.
Right. Hey, well, some of
what is it right now? It is a plot of land with more than 3 cars that may be registered, but it may be that they're registered in a manner
Just to fit the need.
that keeps it from becoming a salvage yard. Because if they're temporary registrations and they keep renewing temporary, we all know people can get away with a variety of things to try to maintain what they have as either their situation or a plan situation.
Yeah.
And so, I'm all for enterprise, but I don't really think that that's much of a job generating enterprise. I see it as a junkyard.
I mean, it basically is a salvage yard is what it seems like. I mean,
That's what it is right
there's
now.
there's no limitation on cars in the salvage
It does
yard in
not
our
adhere to
bylaws.
Salvage yards.
Right.
But it does,
But
there is an
we've got
acreage
multiple-
minimum, which should, I don't think that
what
meets
is the acreage minimum?
10,
10 for salvage yard?
yeah.
Well, that doesn't mean.
Minimum
That's
of
a
10.
1 acre
Doesn't
lot.
need it. But there's a lot of places that don't. So if we make him remove those cars, we're gonna have to do it to all the salvage yards in the town.
Well, there's probably not many salvage yards,
Well, I mean.
because
Right,
one of
that's-
the things is out there is that agricultural land has different rules. They're not
But this is on
often,
the.
yeah,
average.
no, Yeah, I'm just saying,
It's not a business. It's just people have broken down cars on their property.
Just a bunch.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
a bunch, a lot.
I think,
If you drive by there.
45 is the main.
yeah,
yeah, I think that, it just comes down to, that's why we went back to DEC, Bill.
it's gotta be a minimum of 10 acres. No more than 5 shall be used for the salvage yard, so.
Yeah, that doesn't need it.
But he doesn't want a salvage yard.
All right, he wants a
Wants to
building.
build-
Gotta be set back 100 feet. Of course, he doesn't, but that's what he's got.
That's what.
It's
Yeah.
like when you go to look at property and somebody has built an addition on it and it encroaches on the sightlines of another property. It's not what they're planning to do, or it is exactly what it is at that point in time.
That's not the permit he's applying for.
Right,
He's applying for a building.
right.
And he shouldn't be using the land for the purpose that he's using it for until he gets
Until he
it.
gets the
I
permit.
know, but
Right.
we have multiple sites that are doing that.
With 20
Right, but
cars.
again, to get to Nikki's point, we want to deal, we want to give our zoning administrator, we want to give our zoning administrator some guidance about this particular property in this particular case. And I would say to the zoning administrator, this is looking like a salvage yard because it's more than 3 vehicles, certainly. But just from the, if we were to take it to court, a reasonable person would say that's a salvage yard. And I don't think anybody else would ever say, no, that's not a salvage yard. And for that reason, they're not meeting the standards of a salvage yard. They need to stop and move those vehicles off of there until they get the building permit. Why they were allowed to put cars on there to begin with is the mistake.
Right.
Whoever made that decision a year ago.
Nobody made it. It was just, they started putting cars on.
No, they put it,
So-
and then he applied to have the building built, and
Right.
then it got stalled, and then they continued.
So the fence.
Right.
And then he put the fence up in the meantime.
That was the request. So the fence was requested to block
to
the
block
view
the
of all
view,
these
which
cars,
doesn't-
which you could see right through the fence.
And yeah, it's almost a non-fence.
Yes.
Well, you drive by it.
It's almost as if giving permission to build a fence was tacit permission
To
to
add.
put the vehicles.
I think it was a
in the
request from the town, wasn't it?
I,
The point I'm making is that when the town says, we want you to get a building, but if you're gonna put cars there, build a fence around it. And so we built a fence. So the next step logically is the town said, build a fence and I could put cars.
Until.
So it's almost like we said, go ahead and put cars there until you get your building.
right,
Now we're at the stage where there's 20 cars, no building. And it could turn out that the land is so contaminated from the cars that they can't build there because of the contamination of the soils.
right.
So it's not, again, just this particular case, it turns a place that could have been developed into a brownfield
Hmm.
where they couldn't be developed. And that's why I say we as the planning commission, our guidance to the zoning administrator is to say they need to stop and they need to remove the vehicles because they have no building to put them in. And the building has to be properly built to meet fire safety codes for a building that has automobiles with leaking fluids in them.
So that leads me to another question, that we should ask the zoning commissioner to do that. This is the 3rd month we've discussed this issue with no zoning administrator here. So there's a
Hmm.
lack of
Well, it has to be a
communication.
written
Is that?
communication from us to the zoning administrator, since the zoning administrator report was something that Brenda asked for when she was the zoning administrator. It was never really,
It's not a standard thing.
no, it's useful, it's some we benefited from,
Mhm.
but it is on the agenda and hasn't been a report for probably a year.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's necessary to perpetuate it.
Keep it there.
But I think what would be appropriate would be to get the vice chair, no, I'm joking. Hey, a sec. But if you all would like, I could write a letter, send it to all of you, and
That'd be
it would
great.
be very brief, is to
That would
cite
be
the
great.
standards here for salvage yards and say to us, this looks like a salvage yard, there's no building. We understand there were plans for a building a year ago. We understand that permits, we don't approve a house going on
Mhm.
before they get their wastewater permit. Why would we allow junk cars to go on land that doesn't have its permit for a building, nor the permit to be outside? So it's like we've allowed this to, and I personally believe that it was our zoning administrator that allowed it. Because seem to remember they were having conversations, they were dealing with it. And the next thing I heard was they were going to have cars there on a temporary basis, and they were putting up a fence to prevent the ugliness of it. And then the zoning administrator left. So I think,
Yeah, I sort of remember Brenda rejecting it at one time, but,
She rejected the building
uh,
on the grounds that she needed to understand from the DEC
right.
with the wetlands and the building, and because the one corner where he wanted to put the building was in the wetlands, remember?
Mhm.
And there was a whole discussion about it that opened up a whole larger discussion.
Yeah.
Um,
So Vince didn't have any information about what, building requirements for something like that, or
Once
did he?
he's in charge of salvage yards. He said, once you put a car in a building, it's out of his,
So,
out of his
do you know
jurisdiction.
who's?
Well, that's what he said. We need to go back to who Brenda was talking to. That's why I said we need to find those emails that Brian should have in a folder per Brenda and or on the zoning board administrator's keyboard.
Hmm.
On the computer, it's in the emails. He said, we need to find out who she was talking to so we can pick up. Because honestly, obviously, to Bill's point, it's a problem. And on Carl's side of the house, it's not fair. He's been waiting for a year to find out, can he even put a building there? Right? Besides the fact he already started dropping cars there, but his initial request for a building, we have not finished that request. It's been hanging for a year. Somebody needs to put a period on this.
and it wouldn't surprise me that the reason he's putting cars there is because the municipality where those cars exist has asked him to get them
To get them
off
away.
of that property in
Right.
that municipality. So it's being moved from one municipality to another,
Right.
and we're the ones who are the sad sacks in all of this,
Right.
because I've probably coming from multiple municipalities, not just one.
Right. I know it's also coming up from St. Albans. I think I heard 3,
Mhm.
pulling from 3 sites.
Right.
And of course, if you go down 36, you can see the parking lot right where the gas station is. That's now emptied out. That was loaded. with
Right,
vehicles.
that's the hint that I had, that it probably, that our neighboring town said that this is starting to look like a salvage yard.
Right.
You're starting to, there's a river behind there too, and
Yeah.
it's the same river that he's moving just
A few miles
upstream.
A
upstream.
couple miles up the road.
So is our plan then that we will have a letter to the zoning administrator ASAP?
It sounds appropriate, yes, and if
Do we need a motion to do that, or is that just a?
we can make a motion for anything if we wanted to. So if you wanted to memorialize it in a motion, that's a really solid way to do it, that it's not just an individual's opinion, it's a
So I would make a motion that the planning commission communicate via letter to the zoning administrator outlining, what are we going to outline, Bill?
I think it's outlining the planning commission's opinion that it's a salvage yard and that it shouldn't be used as a salvage yard because it doesn't meet the criteria for it, and that it is also inappropriate to use it for that purpose, despite the fact that there may be delays in getting permits. Everybody suffers delays in getting permits, and you wait.
So I think, so it would be that the planning commission will communicate to the zoning. What's his name?
Word is Mr. Oh,
Administrator.
What's his name?
Yeah, that the salvage yard, and what are we calling that salvage yard? Because it's specific, right? Is it associated with stones? Is it,
It is associated with stones for sure.
You
but-
could say Carlstone.
or Carlstone? Is
Carlstone's
it
property.
is it an inappropriate use of the land?
It is a salvage yard without proper permitting or.
I want to keep the motion sort of,
Okay, so
Think.
there's only really one way to do this.
Okay.
For the open meeting law. We can't have it that it happens in some sort of circulation of a draft. It would have to be, for example, that it's drafted, brought to here at the next month's meeting for public comment. It's on the agenda to be discussed so that anybody could
So
come.
shall I invite the zoning administrator to the next meeting?
That would be a good idea, and I think it would make sense to invite Carl
I was
Stone.
gonna say we should invite Carl too.
Okay. Okay, invite Brian. And Carlstone. Okay,
Yeah, as much as I like to do this the way I do it in my job, which is I send something around and ask everybody to read it and comment. We can't do that.
Do that, no.
The only thing we can do is have a special meeting or a regular meeting. And I don't know if anybody wants to have a special meeting. I don't really have any open dates for a special meeting.
Don't have a special meeting.
And I don't know if we need a special meeting, given that this has been going on for a year.
And you're duly warning it anyhow.
We need that warning.
Yeah.
I
you're
think
just gonna
that's
duly
very
warn me,
important.
so.
And maybe we'll hear something more.
Between now and then, yeah,
Right,
that would be good.
okay.
So forgive me, I'm not quite sure where our motion is.
So we have a motion to invite the zoning administrator and Carl Stone to the next meeting where we will review a draft memo to the zoning administrator about the Stone property.
Perfect.
Does that sound?
Second.
All right, second by Ken. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
bye.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I drove by it today and it's too bad. It's really,
I think cars do leave that spot, so I mean, they're not all there permanently, because I know there was a Tacoma there for a while, so I was like, maybe I'll get some tires off that, and it was gone the next time I went by, so I think cars are moving in and out of there, but
It's just the
Not-
volume.
not all of them.
And the lack of.
I can tell you, I had a car totaled that went there and not the salvage yard, Carl's place. And I wanted to get the insurance to take care of it so we could get a replacement car, and they did. And then it was towed away
Mhm.
from there. And so it is by design, very likely that it could be a turnover kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that's what he was gonna tell us when he comes, like, yeah, that's just a holding
Right.
pen until.
But it still doesn't negate the fact that it could have environmental
Yeah.
and public safety impacts,
Yeah,
whether it's inside or outside, and I just don't know what all those are, but this is all good stuff for us to remember when we get into the planning revision and zoning revision process.
And
Okay,
I have a question that is not necessarily for discussion for this time. It's just the thing I always come back to. And I do agree that we need to come up with something that addresses the multiple situations that we are aware of in the community. But how do we enforce that when the time comes? How do we enforce what's on our books? And that we don't necessarily have to discuss it now. It's just whatever we come up with, it has to be something we can.
Right, there was like a,
Do it.
Yeah.
They can't find.
yeah, there was a ticket writing process there for a while, but
really?
I don't think it's ever, like,
No.
we were allowed to write someone a ticket for violations,
Yeah.
but
Was that the zoning administrator?
yeah,
Still are.
Yeah,
I think we
probably.
started.
Yeah, I think the zoning administrator has actually fairly good authority to deny
Mhm.
a permit, obviously, and also to modify a permit. And they may be able to actually go to the environmental court if there is a contention between the two parties, because the zoning administrator says do this and the other says, I'm not going to do that. And the environmental court costs money for your attorney representation.
Right. What about the cases that don't have permits, never intended to have permits? And
Right,
I mean, I guess that's what I'm thinking of, is those circumstances
back
where,
on the avenue.
yeah,
Well, I think you have to look at all of the possibilities that a town has, whether it's select board has the ability to make municipal ordinances. That's good. I don't know, what do you do when you try to enforce an ordinance that somebody does not want to comply with?
Well, we have a couple mechanisms in place, but generally, it comes down to being able to enforce it. And
that's what I'm getting at. We don't have the
It's-
ability to
the
enforce.
problem is that you would normally, your last recourse was to send the sheriff or something over there, and that just, you can't get the police out. It's very difficult, they're understaffed, that's what they tell us and everything else, so. We have a town constable that we're trying to determine what his role will be. And if we can get that hammered out, then maybe we have some recourse in front of us.
Sometimes having the ability to fine can be enough. Where if you have a lawful authority to fine and to continue to increase the fines or to have the fine be on a daily basis, they do that in environmental circumstances, then sometimes people will stop and pay the fine. But in the end, it comes down to court liability or litigation. You need to fight it in court. And the environmental court is usually where that occurs, unless there's some personal injury. And it goes to personal court. Yeah, and you hope that people do things because you ask them to. But it doesn't work.
Not always.
That's why they say when you buy land, buy as much as you can,
Yeah,
so that your neighbors are farther away. Can't mess it. Yeah. And if you live in the village, expect,
Neighbours,
The-
really close by.
and you can't control your neighbors, yeah.
yeah.
They're, even if they made noise, it's hard to get the police to come and straighten it out, because the police are trying to prevent murder, and
It's just not enough of them.
well, nobody wants to pay for them. I mean, it's a vicious circle. We all have these reasons, but it takes money, and
Nobody wants to pay for them until they need them.
Right.
Then they still don't want to pay for them because they think they already are with the tax.
everything's free.
That needs them wants to pay for them, but there's not enough of them.
Doing costs money. All right, well, this was a very lively discussion for an agenda that had almost
Nothing on
it.
it. No, it's good though, because I think these are things that we're gonna have to address, and
Yeah.
the more averse we are,
So we
and
won't begin the new planning until next
No,
week.
I was looking for her email when we got into this. Emily wrote me, I said, hey, I'm a little confused. I thought we would be doing the grant for getting the process started. There we go. And so what she has said to me, I wrote that I've been reading correspondence about the town plan. Seems like the municipal planning grant applications for 2024 are past due, are we planning to apply for one in the fall of 2024? And then would this then be used to prepare a revision for the town approval for the spring of 2025? And I said, that's when our 7 years are up. She wrote back, the date I have for your plan adoption is November 26, 2018, right?
November 2018 is what I've got here, yeah, I didn't have the 26th, so yeah, November 26th.
Right, and that's what, this is the one I,
One,
right. So 7 years from that is still November 2025, right?
yeah,
19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Yeah, so.
So are we supposed to have it ready to be adopted in
Mhm.
November 25?
So I think she's maybe not really adding up right. So I need to write her back and say, hey. But anyway, I heard from her that the next cycle of municipal planning grants will be for fall 2024. The grant announcement would likely be in late December 2024. Yeah, she's thinking we're gonna do it at the end of 2026. So now that I'm not sure why she was thinking, oh no, the plan's valid for 8
right.
years. So it is November 2026.
All right.
That, it wasn't 7 years. I was thinking it was 7
Mhm.
years. It's 8 years. Okay, so we have an extra year. So we'll apply for the planning grant this fall. It would be awarded in December of 2025, and then we would start in the winter of 2026. No, it's awarded early. It's just that it takes about a year to get it done. Because you got to have open meetings, you
Why
want to
not
do it in blocks.
2024? We apply in November 2024
Um,
or next November?
yeah,
Because if this is 2024 and it gets approved in December
Yeah,
2024,
it's still
Sit
2
on it for a
years,
year.
2 years out, yeah,
yeah,
we sit on it for a year.
right.
it's
Okay.
probably,
So it's just, I was nervous about the MPG grant process. We have plenty of time for that. But once we apply for that, we'll get it and we'll start working right then. So that we can get it, so that the March 2026, we want to take it to the town.
Okay,
So March town meeting,
Got it.
2026, we'll have it so that it's done
Ready.
for a town vote. And the town plan requires a town vote. The zoning bylaws.
I think they can be approved by the select board,
I
but
think that's just the
usually the
select
select
board.
board wants us to
Yeah.
get it for the town, let the
which would
town.
reflect the
but-
town.
Oh, no, it's the opposite. It's the town plan is by so it's the zoning has to be adopted by the voters. So that has to be on
And the
town.
town
meeting.
plans. voted
And the
by
town
select
plan
board.
is voted by the select board, but they like it to be an open meeting.
Yeah.
And when we had it, it was not
Yeah.
well attended.
I think they can require a request that we put it to the town too. So I think that's what we did last time. They
Yeah.
wanted the town to be able to vote on it, so we
We had a special meeting
definitely had some special meetings for sure, but
for the town vote.
for the town vote, oh. for the
Because
special vote?
otherwise it wouldn't have been in November.
Yeah, right.
The town vote came in later special meeting,
Right.
and that's why I said it wasn't well. Yeah. Okay, but that would be the goal, if we could, to get it so that we take it to town meeting in 2026, so that it's done with the express approval of the town.
Mhm.
And then it would make sense to continue the process and work on the zoning bylaws immediately after. Although you can do those at any time. We could do those between now and then.
Mhm.
That's actually where the plan is a policy document. But these are called regulations, and regulations have more weight in
So it's implementing. the
decision
plan.
making.
More specific or?
Yes, they're very specific and, you know, they give the actual.
But don't you need the policy approved before you come up with the regulation?
But I think that's what they like,
Yeah.
but I feel like, you know, putting these off till after you get the plan.
We could start drafting some stuff.
Yeah, because revising the town plan is exhausting. And then it'd almost be better to have your energy go into the bylaws. But the bylaws are also very much tied to statute that the state has. So that we don't really have as much flexibility. There are some things like the fixed area allocation. And then there are some things where we can specify, for example, you know, we think that a business that does engine repair or has leaky possibility of leaking fluids, that it meet certain codes if we request that the fire safety division be consulted as to whether it meets their codes for this or that. And I guess one of the things to think about is having some people come and talk to us, present. You have people from other towns, you know, you have people you know with good ideas. Linda's one who's testified here about what she thought she would like to see.
Roger was good about that. Roger Lindola.
Yeah.
He's gone now.
Oh, so he moved?
Yep.
Nova Scotia.
Oh, my goodness.
Or was it Nova Scotia? or
Yeah,
New Zealand?
Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I think it was.
It's a
Nova
nice place.
Scotia.
He's got family up there.
Petite.
Yeah, that,
June,
oh, yes, let's look at that.
next, June,
6.
it's the sixth, third, I think. I think it's the third.
Eighth.
The eighth is a Saturday, I know.
What date?
So
is it?
June 3rd is the first Monday.
I will not be here.
Okay. So June 17th.
It's a holiday and I will not be here, so don't have June around me.
Okay, so you're not gonna be here?
What's the
That-
just-
holiday?
It's Juneteenth.
it's not an official.
Oh, no,
holiday.
actually, it's not. It's the
Yeah,
19th, but I'll be gone that Monday because we're going on a camping trip through the Wednesday.
Well, how's it for everybody else? I mean, we
Yeah.
certainly,
Fine for me.
Cause this is gonna be a hot topic, cause I'm inviting.
yeah, that's a good point too. But we can't really have it on the same night as select board.
No,
It would have to be a different night.
Yeah.
So when are you coming back? Or when are you gone?
I come back on the 8th. And then I'm gone those 3 days, the beginning of the 16th, 17th, 18th, or the, yeah, whatever that.
So you're out the whole week of June 3 through 8,
Yes,
and then the week of the 17th,
yeah,
what, you're out all of that week? too?
no, I'm just out to the 19th.
So you could make it the 20th? So if we were to go with Thursday, the 20th, would that work for people?
I would imagine it would. for me.
That also gives us some time to maybe get some movement and some answers from EC between now and then. Good 6 weeks. Longer than that.
Well, yeah, I mean. It would help to get some answers, but it's not gonna help us to get a draft or a vote on a draft letter.
Would it be better to do it? Oh, no, I wouldn't be there.
Well, the other option is. Despite a letter being voted on tonight, is that we could actually have that meeting on June 20th. And have Carl and the zoning administrator there, and we present the findings
to discuss.
Mhm,
for discussion.
mhm.
And so it could be that. It's not just a letter, it's not a letter to actually present our findings, but it's a letter to invite
Summary
them
of what we're.
to meet with us to discuss
Mhm.
the situation there, which I
Mhm.
think meets the same intention of your
Yes.
motion.
Mhm.
Because it was essentially to invite the zoning administrator and Carl Stone to the next meeting and also to have a discussion or to describe, and to have the planning commission describe their position relative to the site.
Yep.
So we could do that in an open meeting orally, and then at the end of it, we could have a vote for a draft or actually a final letter.
Position. Yeah.
Maybe we don't have to, we could simply make it a decision and we could be explicit decision.
Especially if
Written.
all the parties are there.
So you'll do the invite for ZA and Carl Stone
Mhm.
June 20th?
June 20th.
in the warning,
20th?
7 PM.
Is that gonna be a special meeting or is that gonna be your typical?
That's the regular meeting of, it's been re, because of multiple.
Because of.
Nikki's fault.
There we go.
Trying to keep it out of personal,
So it's fine.
well,
gotta-
we all have
Everyone's gotta go.
occasional,
It just happens that month that
well, yeah,
I'm in the same trip.
right. I'm gonna be out of town for the next 23 days.
Well,
Yeah,
one thing we didn't ever approve the March minutes, I don't think.
I don't think I got them.
We didn't have any.
There was no minutes from that.
You didn't have them in April, you didn't.
Right. Any chance you've got those there?
no.
Okay.
So we need April,
Well, April.
No,
we did
March
it.
minutes.
March minutes.
oh, March minutes.
18th, I think it was, or,
Oh, okay. So me work on,
yeah, March 18th.
I think I might have them in my computer. I just didn't bring it with me. Okay. So June 20th is the next meeting, 7 o'clock.
Hey, Ann. I move we adjourn this meeting.
All right,
Yes.
Third.
Fourth, fifth.
all in favor, say aye.
I.
Opposed, and we are adjourned.